InObscuria!
Welcome back, my friends, to the InObscuria podcast, a podcast where we exhume obscure rock and punk and metal, and we put them in one of three categories: the lost, the forgotten, or the should-have-beens. I'm one of your co-hosts, Kevin Williams, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Robert Harrison.
Well, hello.
What's going on, man?
Man, everything at one time.
I hear you. Before we get going too far today, let's jump into some of the podcasts I think you folks should be listening to if you're not already. I try to do this every week, and I will continue to do this because these folks got me into it, and I think they deserve some attention. So go check out The Dummy Room, Pod of Thunder, Decibel Geek, Podcast Rock City, Cobras and Fire, Growing Up Rock, Rock Strikes 10, History Science Theater, Podkiss, The Kiss Room, and the I Love It Loudcast. Also, please go and check us out at InObscuria.com. Like us, share us, retweet us, all that stuff on social. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And please continue to leave your comments. So it's always cool when we get comments from folks. And I'd like to just call out Mr. Bill Elam. I see that he reposts all the time when we put something up. So thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. So last week, it was a very emotional podcast for us, or at least for me.
Well, it was. I still feel the effects of it.
But the outpouring that we've had on social, at least, has been really positive to the episode, because I think there were a whole bunch of podcasts that were paying tribute, and ours was probably a little bit different in the way that we did it and played some stuff that maybe folks hadn't heard in a long time or had never heard.
Which is what we do.
So it was a kind of a cool spin, and it made me think that maybe down the road, if I put some real thought into it, we can take some of these bands that are a little more mainstream and try to really get some deeper cuts. It's going to be a little bit of work, so I haven't quite decided if we're going to do that or not. But
you got plenty of time to think about it between now and next, whenever. You got like 6 days to think about it.
At least.
But there's lots of bands out there that have been around for decades that didn't really gain mainstream popularity till towards the end of their career, that we can go back and dive into some of their early stuff or mid-range stuff that's going to be pretty obscure.
That's true. And, what we like to do is really focus on bands that didn't have the opportunity, or just because of timing or whatever the issue was, they didn't get the exposure that they deserved.
Their mother was their manager.
We had a few of those.
Yes.
So we like to expose those types of bands. So the way that I typically go around this is, being in Obscuria, is I like to reach out to the other world, the other side, to see if we can get some sort of hints or some sort of guidance on what we should be discussing.
Poltergeist.
Things that are dead that need to be resurrected. And this week, I really didn't have a chance to get out the old Ouija board. So what I was doing is it's almost February, and I'm ashamed to say that I'm still cleaning up Christmas stuff from around the house.
Oh, well, you have a family, so that tends to happen.
Yeah, so one of the things I was cleaning up is as a lot of folks do, we put mistletoe up around Christmas time. And so I take it on the mistletoe out, and I walked outside to throw it in my neighbor's yard when, it's dark and he couldn't see. So I had the mistletoe, and I looked up and I noticed it was a really big, bright moon, and it just happened to be the 5th day of the moon cycle. And I thought, ooh, now I know. Do you know anything about the Druids?
No.
You don't remember about the little people of Stonehenge?
Oh, yes, the tiny Stonehenge or the big Stonehenge?
Whichever one you want to remember.
I know more about the tiny Stonehenge thanks to
Druids,
certain movie.
The Druids were a real thing. They were these wizards from pre-Roman days, before Rome invaded, I guess, what is now current day England. The Druids were like these priests and priestess and these wizards, and they had all these different ways of prophesizing and reaching out to the dead and speaking to spirits and all that. And one of the things they did, and I just happen to remember this from, my studies that I've done over the years, the wide studies.
4 or 5 master's degrees that you have.
Exactly. But I remember they used mistletoe and something about the 5th day of the moon cycle, that they could read the mistletoe and get guidance. This is a real thing. You can look it up.
Sounds pretty whack.
And so I grabbed the mistletoe, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this, but here we go. So I'm standing out in the yard with old dead mistletoe and a bright moon. So who knows? And I just started thinking, and something came to me, a vision of waves, like waves, ocean.
Sound waves, ocean waves.
Ocean waves. I had a vision of an ocean, and then I'm like, that's not helping.
Were you supposed to smoke the mistletoe?
Maybe.
Is that,
maybe. And then I started thinking, okay, well, it's a new year. Okay, new year. Getting a vision of waves, new waves, druids. I got it. We're going to resurrect and excavate the new wave of British heavy metal.
Ooh. I thought you were going the other way with new wave.
No.
Which I'm okay with, but I'd rather do the new wave metal. Though.
The new wave of British heavy metal, or for short, Nawabum.
Nawabum?
Nawabum.
Okay, from now on, Nawabum.
So if are you familiar with this movement?
Yes.
It's late 70s, early 80s. It's a very short period for this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this gave us the bands that I would say shaped most of my music fandom, early on at least. You know, this gave us the Iron Maiden, Def Leppard, Saxon, Diamond Head, Tigers of Pantang. These are all British groups that were big in the scene and came out of this.
Would you throw in Motorhead?
I was going to say, the two bands that are slightly outside of this and ahead of the curve, but remain part of it, Motorhead and Judas Priest.
Well, thank you for that. I want to make sure they were included.
Yes, absolutely. So
shout out to Lemmy there.
Absolutely. And I think that's really what the start of the whole movement was. And if you think about the time, this occurred mostly in England, and there are other bands of that time from other places, America as well as other places in Europe and even Japan, that were having a similar movement, but really it's focused around England. The new wave of British heavy metal was a musical movement that kind of revitalized hard rock and heavy metal. At that point in time, it's late 70s, and the term was coined in 79, but the movement really got going, like we said, with Judas Priest and Motorhead kind of reshaping what was known as hard rock at the time. Because what they did was you had all the older hard rock, that acid rock, that proto-metal that we've talked about before, that stuff got really bloated. So your bigger bands, your Zeppelins, your Deep Purple. I mean, Deep Purple had stopped by that point. Zeppelin didn't. Their last couple albums, they didn't really sound like the Zeppelin that everybody knew. You know, all of that stuff was kind of getting bloated. Even Sabbath, with Ozzy, his last couple albums with Sabbath.
You're talking about bloated.
Yeah, exactly right. It didn't really sound like the Sabbath that everybody loved. So all of that stuff was kind of getting bloated. At the same time, you had this whole punk movement come in the mid to late 70s, where everything was, about aggression and attitude. And the only thing missing was kind of the musicality. And so what the new wave of British heavy metal was all about was about working class guys taking that kind of punk ethos, but applying the old rigor of, I'm actually going to play my instrument, and badass guitar lines are cool in what we're doing. Whereas in punk, it was kind of seen as you wanted to focus more on the aggression and the attitude at that point in time than the music. You had some great punk music from that time, but the focus was not on, we're going to have these great twin guitar minis.
Yeah, you don't think of great leads when you think of punk rock.
Exactly. And that's what the new wave of British heavy metal did, is it focused on the playing, but also it was DIY. It was the working man. It was the guy playing in a pub, and not dressing like Jimmy Page did, but just wearing jeans and whatever he came in off the street in. So that's kind of where that came from. And a lot of these bands started to get some attention, mainly from different DJs who were playing in England, shows kind of dedicated to this rising scene. And one of those was Neil Kay. Neil Kay was a DJ, and he released a compilation called Metal for Mothers, Muthas. And that is where a lot of these groups got their start and where they got some notoriety. Maiden included in that mix, and Samson, who was the band that Bruce Dickinson was in before he was in Iron Maiden.
I always get that mixed up with Saxon. I know they're two different bands, but
yeah, well, Saxon's definitely part of this mix, and Saxon's one of my favorite Nawabum bands that there is. Compilations were released, and back then that was kind of the way that things worked. That was kind of the Spotify of the time, if you will. If you got on a compilation and that got good distribution and they played it in clubs, actually, DJs would actually go to clubs and spin records.
And
that's
can you
how.
imagine walking into a club,
crazy.
the DJ spinning metal music instead of the
Exactly. But that's how it worked. The other thing that I'm thinking about as I think about this time, there was a huge recession in England, a lot of political and economical unrest in England at the time. So that even contributed to not only the punk movement, but to this movement as well. Because it was you do it yourself. It's all about the working class. Don't tell me what to do. I'm going to go do what I want to do, and nobody can tell me any different.
Amen.
That sort of thing. So the other thing to mention here is fashion. So the new wave of British heavy metal pretty much established the look of heavy metal as we know it to this day.
And I remember hearing a story about Judas Priest and how he basically just went to the leather shop and said, just I'll take that, and just load it up on everything. And then the rest of the band members were like, oh, okay, we're going to dress like that now.
Right. And we know where he was going.
Yeah.
To get
Rob
those.
Halford.
Rob Halford was.
He gets one of the early credits for that.
Yeah. It's the same place that Kiss got those early costumes, the S&M shop. Same place. But a lot of these, Joe Worker, it was just about denims. Wear your denims, wear your ripped up jeans. If you have leather, wear your leather jacket. And this is also where the ultimate heavy metal battle vest. This is where that all started. Putting the patches, show who you're devoted to, put their logo on you, wear their T-shirt, put their patches on your jacket. Show your devotion to these bands, and they were doing that at the local level. Guys were walking around London or wherever they were in England wearing patches of bands that hadn't been signed. It was a local DIY kind of thing. It was just show what you're into, because this was an underground movement at the time before it got snatched up.
You need to post a picture of your jacket. It's pretty epic. So maybe on this week's episode, when we go on social media, follow us on Facebook and Instagram online. That was subliminal. Did you see that?
Yeah, it was nice.
But yeah, you do have a pretty epic rock and roll jacket, so you should be proud of that and show that off.
I have two of them, and it's, that whole thing started with this scene, which is crazy to think. And this really only lasted a couple of years. What ended up happening is, as we go through these groups that we're going to listen to, of course, when money comes into something that has been done at a local level, you get told to do things and you get influenced, and money's a big influencer. And so bands that start off as very true to what their vision is at the time quickly morph and get bloated themselves, because somebody who has money is offering them another option. Mm-hmm. So we'll see a lot of these bands only lasted a few albums. The ones that stayed are the tried and true. You've got your Maidens today, Saxon today, Diamond Head's still around. There's a lot of these bands still out there, and even some of these smaller groups that we're going to discuss, they're still out there, or they came back later to kind of reimagine themselves again after maybe having a couple of missteps. I wanted to mention that there are two Sam Dunn. One of them's a movie and one of them's a series. But Sam Dunn, who did A Headbanger's Journey, it was a movie that came out, a great documentary. He focused a little bit on Nawabum in that. And then also when he did a full series called Metal Evolution, he devoted a full episode to the wave of British heavy metal, which is really cool. So go check that out. You can get that, I believe, on Amazon, or perhaps it's streaming or on Netflix. I'm not sure. But go check that out. And you can just type in Sam Dunn. He's got a ton of movies that are all metal related. And then the other thing is there's some great compilations out there for some of these groups that we're going to be playing that are a little more unknown. There's a great compilation that came out in the early 2000s called Lightning to Nations. It was a compilation. It was a 25th anniversary of Nawabum and had a bunch of these bands on it. I'm going to spin a couple of songs from that. And then if you can find the metal from others, there was, I think, 3 or 4 of those in the series. So go check those out, and you can get a lot of this material.
There's your homework.
And I think the biggest thing with the compilations that were released for these bands is this is the same way, just a few short years later, that the thrash bands would also be found. So Metal from Others came out in 80, and you had, like I said, Maiden and Samson and all of these other new wave of British heavy metal groups. These were the same groups that were influencing the soon-to-be thrash scene from the Bay Area and from L.A. and New York. And those bands would be discovered on the Metal Massacre compilations, which was a U.S. release, but that's where Metallica came from. And if you think about any of the covers that Metallica have done,
Diamond Head,
good percentage of them are new wave of British heavy metal bands. That's where they came from. So,
except for that one Bob Seger cover. I didn't really like that.
Do not like that one.
No, still, it's like way too long.
That one's
too
not
self-absorbed.
Right. But anyway, let's get into it. The first group I want to play is one that's a little bit bigger in the scene, but I did want to play it because it was a big influence on Metallica and on Megadeth. So this is one of Dave Mustaine's favorite bands, a band called Angel Witch. And they're a South London band that started in the mid-'70s. Their original name was Lucifer, and then they changed to Angel Witch. And actually in the early days, Iron Maiden actually supported them.
They opened up for them?
Yeah.
Nice.
Isn't that crazy? And the song I'm going to play is called Sweet Danger. And this was a single that actually did really well on the UK singles chart for 1 week. And then it fell way, way down. And they actually hold some kind of record for the worst descent. Performance of a single.
Was there another song or something else that came on, or just...
I don't know.
There's no other story behind that?
I just thought that was kind of funny that, here's the new movement. They got really good results for 1 week.
And then people are like, nah, this sucks.
And then it went away. Like so many of these bands, the band dissolved in the mid-'80s, and one of the things they had tried to do was to relocate to the U.S. because they saw what they had influenced, which was the thrash scene. So they moved to the U.S., but it didn't work out. However, like a lot of these bands that we'll talk about, they have been active again since around the middle of the last decade. So 2012 to even today, they're still around, Angel Witch. They even released a single last year. So this band is still going strong, but I'm going to play something from 1980, and this is called Sweet Danger.
that has to be probably my favorite period of metal, the earlier phases before it got to Over the Mountain and Far Away and fantasy like this. Just straight ahead rock and roll. It's heavy. It's hard. There's not a lot of progressivity. I'll have to look that one up. But
Progressiveness.
I mean, I'm big into Motorhead and stuff like that. Like I said, just straightforward, hard and heavy rock and roll. And a lot of these bands, Iron Maiden and a few others, that towards the end, they were really over the top, which is still fine. It's good music. But for me personally, I always gravitate to the early times when it was just go out there and kick some ass.
There are components, like I said, of punk rock, right? There are components of that acid rock proto metal, which is really kind of boogie rock, which is kind of that's kind of what Motorhead did, right?
Yeah.
They kind of took that boogie and just heavied it up. And then there are a lot of these bands that also, because they didn't shy away from the technicality, they did take a little bit of that progressiveness. And I think Maiden and Priest are a good example of that. And some that take it too far. And this one, Angel Witch is more of they influenced what was to become thrash, I think.
And for the record, I never said too far. I just said different. I don't want anybody to come and find me here and
but I mean,
knocking on my door and anything like that. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. There's definitely a common sound and quality of these early bands. It was a movement in all sense of the words because it had so much in common. All these bands had so much in common. It's not hard to listen to them and go, yes, that's Nawabum.
And the other thing that I think we'll see as we continue playing these is the production is, for the most part, not great on most of these. Again, these were young bands that even if they got signed to a major, a lot of times it was like an offshoot of a major, so they weren't on the major label. In the first couple albums, if they lasted longer than that, they may have gotten bigger budgets to do bigger sounds. But these are really guys going in, late night sessions, cut the album real quick, mix it, get it out there, try to sell some product. So a lot of these are very similar to the early punk records where there was no budget behind it. Just go in there, do it yourself. You may have a little bit of a budget, but do what you can, get it out there.
And I can see how this might be a response to the really huge 70s arena rock bands, the Zeppelins, Pink Floyd,
who spent gobs of money to record their album.
Massive. And then you have this complete 180 back to the basics, very similar to late 80s, early 90s. You had hair bands just getting crazier and wackier and sillier, and then what do you have? Complete 180 back to the basics again. And both of those real similar in their movements.
Yeah, very, very cyclical. Good pull, because I think this is kind of like the earlier version of what was to come again, like you said, in the early 90s, where everything got bloated once again, and so you want to pull back to something that's raw and in your face, and that's what this was at the time in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So the next band I'm going to spin gets a little more into that progressiveness era, that sort of wizards and demons kind of thing, and this is a band that is called Cloven Hoof.
Cloven Hoof.
Cloven Hoof.
Must be an English thing we're not getting.
Yeah, I don't know
Clove
exactly.
And Hoof? That sounds
Cloven.
Like oh, okay.
Cloven
sounds like
Hoof.
a pub.
It does sound like a pub.
The Cloven Hoof.
Let's go down to the Cloven Hoof. Have ourselves a pint. They're from Wolverhampton, West Midlands, England, and they were active from 79 to 90. And then again, as with most of these bands in the 2000s and the last decade especially, they've been going again. Their original name was Night Stalker. Not really sure why they decided to change it. Maybe there was another band named Night Stalker, or
there was an actual Night Stalker that just is bad for PR.
Could be. The other thing they did is they like Iron Maiden, who put theatrics into their band. They did the same thing. Their four band members had pseudonyms, so they were based on the four elements. So you had water, fire, air, and earth. A little kitschy, but that's what they did. And this band actually had some help early on from Robert Plant. He got into this band and helped them get their first demo at BBC, and even Rob Halford helped get them some airplay. So there were some folks behind this band that wanted to see them go further. And this is an interesting song. It's a little bit longer. Like I said, it's a 6-minute, a little more epic. It's similar to, I think, where Maiden were headed, especially once Dickinson joined the band. We'll let you be the judge. This is from their album, The Opening Ritual, in 1982. This is The Gates of Gehen. Maybe I'm saying it right. I'm not sure. Check it out. Cloven Hoof.
song was so long, I forgot the name of the band. Was it Cloverdale? Coverdale? Cover page?
Cloven Hoof.
Cloven Hoof.
Yep.
I bet they had a tiny Stonehenge on stage at some point.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Totally possible. I don't know. I have to go back and look at some images of them.
They hit all the elements for Nawabum, and just, I can see where if they are around at the same time as Iron Maiden, they did it just a little bit better. They did the same thing, but just a little bit better.
I could see Steve Harris, watching them live going,
oh, yeah.
We can do that better.
Yeah, okay, sure.
I can take a little bit of that.
I see that lead you did there, and I'm going to just knock that out of the park.
Yeah, we're going to keep our drums consistent so you don't keep stopping it. There was a lot of starting and stopping.
A lot of stop and start. I think he was taking a drink in between or something. He had a problem.
The only thing with that song that they forgot about was the groove.
Right.
But
right. You can't
other than that, really cool. But I agree, it needed a little more groove. So we're going to get into some groove next. We're gonna go to the girls that showed them all how to do it.
What? I'm sorry. What was that? Girls?
The girls that showed them how to do it.
Really?
This is the band Girlschool. And if you don't know Girlschool, they were pretty big in this movement, and they did fairly well. And they've been around for 40 years. They're still going strong, and they're associated with one of your favorite bands. These girls were best friends with Motorhead.
Oh,
so
Motorhead, yes.
Lemmy helped this band out a lot in their early days.
I bet he did.
I bet he did. No, Girlschool, great band, and they got some really good exposure from Lemmy, who offered them a supporting slot on Motorhead's Overkill tour.
Because that's the kind of guy he was.
Because that's the kind of guy he was. So in 1979, Girlschool opened for Motorhead on their tour, and it was the start of a relationship with that band where they would endure, the whole time that the bands were together. They actually put out an EP in 1981 called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, where both bands performed together on a couple of songs. One of them was a cover, and then they had some other songs. And they performed live on, I believe it may have been live in a festival, but I know it was on TV, and they went under the name Head Girl, Motorhead and Girlschool. The album that came out after they did that in 81 is my favorite Girlschool album. It's called Hit and Run, and I'm going to play a song from that album. And like I said, this band is still together. They've had obviously some member changes over the years, but still a great kick-ass rock band. They're a little more like Motorhead. The reason the two bands got together so famously is because they had similar sounds and similar thoughts on how rock and roll should be played. So you'll see some similarities here, but I'll be curious to see what you think of this. This is Girlschool off their album Hit and Run from 1981 with Come On, Let's Go.
Wow, where's that been all these years?
I know, and
that was refreshing.
If you heard some cracks and pops at the beginning and end, that's because I actually ripped it off my vinyl copy.
You actually put the microphone above the...
No. I actually plugged it in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can actually hear the needle drop on that one.
But I could totally see Lemmy hearing them for the first time and uttering something completely unintelligible and then offering them some jack and hitting it off from there. I mean, I can...
Come on tour.
That sounds exactly like us. Yes.
That's what I want.
Come on. Yeah, let's go.
Come on, let's go.
That was it.
Yeah. So again, that they're still around. They're the longest running all-female group of all time because they've been around for over 40 years. I think more so than any.
Vixen? No.
No, they predate Vixen for sure. But anyway, go check out Girlschool. They have a ton of albums, and that happens to be my favorite one from 1981, Hit and Run. All right, so the next song I'm going to jump into is a band from Mansfield, Nottinghamshire, England, formed in 78. And this is a band that Metallica covered. And I actually have never heard the cover of this that I can think of. It's a song called Let It Loose. The band is called Savage. I don't know that I've ever heard Metallica's cover of Let It Loose, but I know they covered it as early as 1982. So this is one of those new album bands that Metallica, early reference for Metallica and helped form, what would become the thrash movement that we all
Did they record it, or was it
80s.
just something they played in concert a lot?
I'm not sure. I've read, several places that this was one of the bands that they covered, but I don't know that I've ever heard a recorded version of it. Maybe I'll have to search that out. But anyway, the other thing is, if you saw Metallica on their last tour for Hardwired to Self-Destruct, James was wearing one of his infamous battle vests, and this band's patch was very boldly displayed.
Right,
he had a big
Savage
patch on his chest. So this is one of the bands that he digs a lot. Unfortunately, they split up in '86, and then they kind of reunited off and on. And in recent years, they've played a little bit, but not quite as much as some of the other bands that got together and continued releasing albums. But I thought it was cool that Hetfield is still supporting this band even now to this day. So kind of cool. So I want to play something from their 1983 album Loose and Lethal, and this is called The China Run.
City, you'll be a warlord. You're in the golden
it was nice. I liked it.
I heard a lot of Motorhead in that. I don't know if the guitars especially, I could tell that they were heavily into Motorhead, or at least it seemed to me.
They're a little more, the sound wasn't as pretty and as, I don't know, the technical term for it in my barely trained ears. And that band is going to go in the category of a lot of other bands that we play where there's not that much difference between them and the bands that went on to fame and stardom.
Yeah.
And you have to think about what are those qualities that keep these bands. I mean, the song was good. There wasn't a catchy moment in it for me. And maybe if I heard it 3 or 4 times, there would be that thing that I'd pick up on. And maybe that's it. That these songs are good, but those other bands that we listed that have very large houses on multiple continents, they were able to go that one extra step and have that catchy hook or something about them. I don't know, maybe the visual on-stage performance was just that much better. Who knows, without doing a lot more research on it that we don't have time for.
It could have been right place, right time for
whomever
took that. I mean, if you think about Metallica, they took all of this stuff, and everything we've heard, it's kind of been, it's not that fast pace that we think of with thrash, but it's kind of that breakdown part of a thrash song is where a lot of this, is the meat and potatoes that help build where they were heading. So maybe if these bands would have kind of shared with Metallica just a few short years later. I mean, the first Metallica album came out in 83 as well, so that's when this came out. So if they would have kind of shared some of those ideas and went, these guys are playing really fast, so maybe we should incorporate some of that. And
yeah, because it's got that rockin' galloping groove throughout the song.
Exactly. It had that maiden gallop to it.
Maybe that was just supposed to be part of the song.
Guitars.
Like Metallica would throw that in as, like you said, the breakdown in the middle of the song.
Yeah, so who knows, like you said, but definitely that could have been something else. I mentioned earlier there was the Metal for Mothers album compilation, and then also the compilation that I got several years now, but I got a compilation called Lightning to the Nations, and it was Nawabum 25th Anniversary Collection. And this is one of the bands that I had read about. I have these heavy metal encyclopedias that they put out years ago as actual book, and I forget who put them out, but they had a couple of different versions of it, and I used to just pore over them because it had all sorts of bands in it that I had never heard, and before the internet, you didn't really have a way to find these bands, so you just read about them. Or I would read about them in the magazines of the back in the day, where they would reference, especially Metallica in the thrash groups when I was reading. Because when I was getting into music, it was Metallica was the first band, one of the first tapes I ever had in '86, and then not soon after was Maiden. So again, for me personally, all of the music that was, Maiden was dead in it, but all of the bands that I was following coming out of punk and into thrash metal, they were all influenced by this stuff. So you would hear them name drop in the magazines, a lot of these groups, but you would never see any of their material until I was able to get some of these compilations that I would later find. And this is one of the bands, the next one I'm going to play is one of the bands that I always read the name of, and I went, how is that even a band that these guys like? The name alone just sounds really dumb. But it's a cool band. And they weren't around long, but their name was Ethel the Frog. They were on Metal to Mothers and some of the other compilations.
Well, if you're going to have a name like that, you better be badass. I mean, you got to have something to back that up with.
So I looked up to see where in the hell did they get that from, and it was actually a Monty Python sketch, Ethel the Frog.
As in Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Well,
there was also...
Okay,
was it
so
the
there
same
was...
sketch?
Same sketch. There was also another... There's an alternative band that's from the States called Toad the Wet Sprocket from the early 90s, right? There was actually a Nawabum band also called Toad the Wet Sprocket long before the band that we know of. They're on the same compilation. So there's Ethel the Frog and Toad the Wet Sprocket on this compilation that I have.
I guess when you're looking at it before you hear it, you've got to go, that doesn't quite make sense. They were 6 years old at the time.
Yeah, Monty Python sketch. And this band was formed in '75, so that was all current then. But they were kids in school when they formed the band, just like so many of these bands. They were also known as the Frogs, and you also see it sometime as, I believe, EF. Anyway, when I finally heard the band, I was like, "Ooh, okay, now I get why these." I always thought it was a joke. They would talk about, "Oh yeah, we were into Ethel the Frog." Like, what are you talking about?
Some type of Disney outcast.
Yeah. So the way that this group even came to be known is they entered some kind of rock and folk competition. And they didn't get to the finals, but Neil Kay, again, the DJ who was searching out this music, he found them and got them onto his compilation. So they weren't around long, but I want to play some Ethel the Frog for you. So this is a song called Fight Back. And again, this is off the Lightning to the Nations Nawabum 25th Anniversary Collection. Ethel the Frog.
Well, you were just a young boy, you thought life was a game. You missed all your chances, just yourself to blame. You got used to being pushed around. You got used to the taste of ground. Then you began to realize the power in your hands that makes you different from every other man. When you're on your stage, you're floating through the air. You can do anything without a care. Time to fight back. Time to fight back. Time to fight back. Time to fight back. You love to stand there with the bar in your hands, 'cause it makes you feel that you're the one and only man. When you're standing there on your stage, you hold the key to their little cage. Time to fight back. Time to fight back. Time to fight back. Time to fight back. You love to stand there with the power in your hands, 'cause it makes you feel that you're the one and only man. When you're standing there on your stage, you hold the key to their little cage. Time to fight back. 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 Time to fight back.
That was dangerously close to punk rock.
I love it.
I like it. I really like it too. I can see why bands would reference that and want to cover their songs, because that was relatively simple, and they could take it and put their own stamp on it, add their own flair to it. It wasn't something they had to cover note for note, or people would get upset with them. They'd just take that song and run with it. It was fun.
Yeah, and to me, they were like it almost sounded like a Judas Priest Jr., a little bit. It was like that lower register Rob Halford kind of voice.
Not the
and
10 octaves high.
Exactly. And the middle part with the guitar and bass kind of playing the same rhythms, it kind of reminded me of Rush a little bit, like early Rush. Mm-hmm. And then the lead comes in. It also reminded me of an Alex Lifeson kind of lead. So I have a feeling these guys were into Rush at the time as well. But
good for them.
You could tell it was a young band. Mm-hmm. I would have liked to have seen what could have happened with this band, because I felt like that was such a really cool song, and just to see them progress a little further. I mean, again, they were very young when they did this, and that came out in 80, and then they disbanded in 81. So they never really had a chance to blossom as a band and to grow as a band. But
they needed Lemmy. Where was Lemmy?
They needed Lemmy to help them at the same time. He was too busy with Girlschool.
Yeah, I understand.
So then we're going to move to 81, and this is a band that I cannot remember how I discovered them. I think it was one of those that I had read of this band, but I'd never seen them on any of these compilations. I had only heard of this band, and I thought, well, maybe they're not a direct reference to Nawabum. Maybe they were just a band that was around in England at the time. And that's kind of the case. It's a band called Gaskin. and they're from North Lincolnshire, England. And in the 70s, the guy Paul Gaskin, who's the leader of the band, he was writing a rock opera, and it got presented and played and had a few nights and was kind of a success locally where they're from. And then he took kind of that whole scene and moved it to kind of a new wave of British heavy metal band. So a little bit on the side of what was going on, but they still are classified as a new wave of British heavy metal band. And they actually toured with most of the groups that you can think of that are part of the movement. And they also toured with a band called Wishbone Ash in '82. Do you know who Wishbone Ash is? So Wishbone Ash, a few weeks ago we were talking about Guitarmonies, and we were talking about where that came from, and we mentioned Thin Lizzy and Judas Priest. Well, as I was thinking about that episode afterwards, I thought, I forgot to mention Wishbone Ash. And Wishbone Ash was an English group they get put in the progressive rock world because they have some longer form songs and they can't be categorized that well. But they were a Guitarmony band very similar to Thin Lizzy, had always had these great guitar harmonies. And I can see where this type of band would have been into them. And they were a much bigger band, Wishbone Ash was, in England than they were in the States. But maybe at some other point we'll get into some Wishbone Ash. But I did want to point out, because we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. But anyway, Gaskin actually toured with Wishbone Ash in '82. So they had some moderate success. And I'm going to play a song called Despiser from their album that came out in '81 called End of Worlds.
despise all. He brings only fear.
I hope I never have to meet the despiser. He doesn't sound like good people to me.
And you'd think I was drinking tonight because I can't seem to get any
You're
of
not?
the titles right. No, I'm drinking coffee, but man, I can't seem to get anything right. So the album is not End of Worlds; it's End of the World. I don't know why I couldn't
As
get
we
that
know
out.
it, yes.
Yes. I see what you did there.
I mean, okay, so that band goes into the same category as several others where they've got all the things, all the high notes, all the galloping grooves going on with it, the guitar harmonies, everything there. But what do they not have? What is that thing that's not in that song that made it kind of, it was all right, yeah, in the eyes of record companies or in the fans too, not just record companies, but fans more importantly, that they liked them, but not as much as all these other bands that we know their names by.
Right. Yeah. Why were they not selected? Because to me, that was a talented band.
Yeah, they got skills, obviously.
They had their stuff together, and I really like. They only released 2 albums, 81 and 82, before they disbanded. And then again, just like a lot of these bands, they've gotten together in recent years.
Kids are out of college and they're ready to get do
I think
something
that's
else.
exactly what happens. Is it's these bands get into their 50s or even beyond, and they go, "We got time again.
Yeah,
We're
I
not
got nothing
working.
better to do."
We're not working again. So let's play some music." And there's an appetite for it, and a lot of these bands are playing like the festival circuit and clubs, and and there's a lot of appetite for what they helped.
Is that what we're going to do? Are we going to do that?
Yeah, our festival is going to be like 3 people, but
Okay.
we'll play it.
Ghost Fest, yeah.
Yeah, Ghost Fest. We already played one. That's a story for another day. So anyway, yeah, Gaskin. I thought they were really cool. Again, I had read about them, and only in recent years did I find digital download. So it was both albums together on one download. I was like, what the hell? And I listened to it and went, this band is great, man. Really cool stuff.
Very talented.
So the next band I'm going to play is a band called A to Z, which is how they say it in England. No, we would say A to Z, but they say A to Z. And the reason I know this is because the one album that they recorded, they got signed to Polydor, and they record a live album. Who records a live album, their first album? But that's what they did, and the reason I know their name is A to Z is because before they come on stage, the whole crowd is chanting A to Z.
That's where Zed Leppelin got their name.
Exactly. So that's how I know. Yeah, so founded in 1979 in Manchester. They got snatched up very quickly because, again, this was a scene, and they got signed to Polydor, and they released this live album called The Witch of Berkeley. And it was a hometown gig that they recorded live, and that's their first album. Go figure. But they played UK tours supporting Girlschool, and they supported Black Sabbath in 1980. 81,
Lucky guys.
They also supported Iron Maiden on several shows. So this band had it going on, but then they disbanded in 1982.
Right when it was getting good.
It was just getting going, yeah. So, and the reason they list as disbanding is they tried to go AOR. Again, you get a little bit of money from the company, and they got signed to Polydor. They're on a major. If you guys just change your sound, you're going to be even bigger. And of course, it caused the demise of the band,
Wow.
That old story. So anyway, I'm going to play a song called Treason. This is not one of the live cuts. When they re-released this debut album, they put some non-live cuts on it, and I'm going to play one of those. So this song is called Treason, A to Z, 1980, off The Witch of Berkeley.
The wizard made his home. He set a fire trees on.
That was a pretty respectable rock and roll scream at the beginning there, I have to say. That was pretty good.
It was good.
He's got some pipes. I mean, the all-time best has to be Bruce Dickinson, Number of the Beast. If you want to find me about it, that's fine, but I still think that's the best rock and roll scream ever. You think about it. You'll know what I'm talking about when you listen to it. Right as it kicks in. Yeah. So
I think
it's like that completely threw
I'm a
me off on
Halford. I probably would go with Halford over.
He's got some good screams.
Screaming
Yeah.
for Vengeance,
No,
Halford.
he's got the octave capability. A little bit higher than Bruce Dickinson, but just a very powerful scream that just timed it just right.
It's really hard.
It's hard
with those
to pick.
two.
There's so many. I celebrate the entire
The fact
catalog.
that those two actually recorded a song together at one point is pretty cool. Have you ever heard that?
No.
The One You Love to Hate. It was on Halford's, one of his solo albums called Halford.
Uh-huh.
And he and Bruce sing together. Now, you would expect, my expectation was that they were going to have these amazing harmonies,
Uh-huh.
but instead they kind of sang the same note, which is a little odd. It still was cool that the two
That's
of them
hard
were
to do.
singing together, but they were kind of
Without
matching
clashing.
the note without clashing. But I was like, you guys are two of the best singers ever. Throw some crazy harmonies in there. But that's not really what they did.
You know what? That goes hand in hand with a lot of these super groups and things like that. You get all excited about it, and you put these geniuses in the same room, and it's just kind of, that's cool that they were singing together. It's not,
But it was
our
cool that they did it.
expectations. It's
But
still
that's,
cool.
That's not what we're talking
But getting
about.
back to the song that we just played, it reminds me again, all these bands played back to back to back. Reminds me of what I like about metal in this genre, the harder driving songs without the slower doom, Satan and religion and, the Sabbath and the Ronnie James Dio. May he rest in peace. No disrespect to that. That's a necessary part of metal. It's just not what I gravitate towards. You've got to be in the right mood for that. This stuff here gets me moving, gets the blood flowing. I feel better after I listen to these songs versus some of the slower, heavy, just drag it out metal that what I'm talking about. Maybe not be describing it
doom.
correctly.
It's doom.
Just doom.
Yeah.
That it's just a different part of metal.
We played stoner metal a few weeks ago, and that's derivative of doom, but it has more groove to it, what we played. But yeah, I know what you're saying. And there were plenty of these bands that the other thing they did for heavy metal was they also set metal on the course of what was to become with black metal and death metal. So there were plenty of satanic groups I could have pulled from that came from this scene. Venom being the most popular one that came out of this whole scene, and they were very fast. And I'm not a huge Venom fan. I like them all right, but they coined the phrase black metal, and then it's a whole genre unto itself now. But that's not really my scene, so I didn't really pull any of those bands. But it's not the doomy stuff that you're thinking of. But yeah, I know what you're saying. In this band, I'm not sure why they didn't. Well, they said they went try to go AOR, but I'm not sure why they couldn't have made that. Not that, but I don't know why they couldn't have made what they were doing work. Because to me, that guitarist was probably, of all the songs we've played, that was probably the most talented guitarist from a lead standpoint that I've heard in any of the songs we've played. Obviously, a lot of the guys are really good in the bands that we've played, but that one, I don't know his name. I'd have to look it up, but that guitarist was really good. I don't know what he went on to do.
Yeah, I'd like to know
Great
what his lifespan was as far as other bands, groups. Was he just a session musician after that?
Yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling he probably ended up in some other group, but
Yeah.
And maybe it's one that we know, but who knows? I'll have to go check that out. Maybe our listeners could go check that out for us and tell us that we got our facts all wrong. That'd be awesome. Because it
Not the
happens,
first
because
time.
we don't know everything. We just hear music, and I try to dig up as much as I can. This is an excavation. The other thing is, I was thinking about that band going AOR. Can you imagine that group, what we just heard, trying to play like a Journey song?
I'm imagining it right now.
I just don't think there's a reason it didn't work.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Steve Perry, he's not.
Yeah. Okay, the next band I'm going to jump into is a band called Legend. And as I was doing a little bit of research to try to figure out where these guys came from, there were actually two Nawapum bands called Legend, which is kind of funny. Pre-internet, you couldn't go name search out there and see if there was another band. It was just if you were in an area, you had a name, and until somebody sent you a cease and desist letter, you kept your name. So the Legend that I know, I don't know the songs from the other one, but the one I know is from Jersey, not New Jersey, Jersey. Old Jersey, which is an island. It's a channel island between England and France. The other Legend was from Kent, but I've never heard that band. So anyway, the band from Jersey, they were active from 80 to 84, and just like a lot of these other bands, they reformed in the early 2000s and have kind of been playing since. They actually supported Thin Lizzy on their 81 tour. And they had their first 3 releases that they put out were completely self-financed and self-released. So everything they did was really DIY, which is total punk rock. That's the way you do things. You're going to do it, you just put it out yourself. So these guys totally did that. They're a little more, in my mind, they're a little more proggy than some of the other bands that we've played, but I'll let you be the judge of that. This is a song called Choices. This is Legend from their album 1982's Death in the Nursery.
choices. Stay pure and you will see that when you die it's over. At last you will be free.
How about that funky intro?
I know, had a little funky
That
groove
was
at the beginning.
really nice. I love that.
That's actually why I chose that song,
Yeah.
because I'm like, that's the outlier for a lot of these groups. They didn't have that kind of
No, this was
groove
less
kind of thing.
Nawabum than some of the others, but I liked it. For, like you said, if you can start off with a little bit of a funk groove and then turn it into a Nawabum song, that I'm very happy about that. But yeah, this was probably a little bit less of the typical things we heard in some of the other songs.
Right. Yeah. And interesting, I did find this band. I found out about them on a Nawabum site. There's a great website that is basically just an encyclopedia of new wave of British heavy metal bands, and it's called nawabum.com. So go check it out. It's just
How is that spelled?
it's the initials for new wave of heavy.
I didn't know if they did the
British heavy metal.
NEW and then WAB. Okay, just
No,
making
but
sure.
they don't have every band, and it's funny because they don't have articles for some of the bigger bands. Maybe they were fearful that somebody would take it down or something, but they have a lot of the obscure bands and lots of content in there, mostly listing of where the band's from and what the albums were and what the songs were that they played. But not really, you can't stream or anything like that, but you get some good information. And that's how I found out about Legend. I was just going through and browsing, and then I would go in and see if on Amazon or any of some, eMusic or any of those sites, if there was any music out there after I discovered the band. And that's how I found Legend. I found their album Death in the Nursery on eMusic, and I downloaded it.
Any of their other songs have the funk element to it, or is that kind of just a unique?
Well, like I
intro?
said, they're a little bit more progressive, so
Right.
they do have some other songs that not so much funk, but definitely pulling in some different types of music, not just straight ahead, in your face metal. But very interesting. I like that band a lot. All right, my ninth pick is a band called Quartz. They have an interesting story. Another band that I had seen their logo on someone's jacket, and so then I went out and searched the band out and went, oh, Quartz, I've never heard of that band. Sounds cool. Go check it out. Did a little research and checked them out and found their music and really loved it, and found out they were a new wave of British heavy metal band. When I did the research on where they came from, they were originally a backing band in the early 70s for a soul singer in England. So these guys have chops, and they were doing like cabaret clubs before they got discovered, and they were called Bandy Legs before they changed their name to Quartz. Must be an English thing.
It
that
definitely
we
is
don't
an
know.
English thing, yes.
But anyway, they were signed to Jet Records, and if you know Jet Records, most people only know that record company's name from one person, and that's Ozzy Osbourne.
Mm-hmm.
The first couple Ozzy Osbourne albums were on Jet Records, so it's kind of interesting. And their debut album was produced by none other than Tony Iommi of Black Sabbath and Chris Sangrades, who he produced a slew of early 80s metal albums. So they had some pretty big backing behind them. They were later signed to MCA, but they were dropped because of lack of sales. But the other big thing about Quartz is their keyboard player, Jeff Nichols, was snatched up by Tony Iommi, and all of the 80s Black Sabbath albums until Ozzy came back, Jeff Nichols was kind of the fifth member of Black Sabbath. So
Making
that's-
a nice little paycheck there. But
yeah, I'm sure he was getting a nice, decent salary. So I'm going to play a song from their second album. And this band, again, just like all the rest, they've reunited in recent years and are playing again. But this is off their second album called Stand Up and Fight. And this is the title track from that album, Stand Up and Fight, 1980.
Looking for the right time to leave the place that I have lived and loved for so long.
If you ever wondered what Geddy Lee would sound like if he was more of a metalhead, that was pretty close, I think. What year did you say that came out in?
80.
80.
80.
To me, it sounds like a little bit later because there's kind of an evolution from late 70s into the early 80s as far as the sound quality goes, the guitar tones, the singers' voices even, that have that more metal quality as it bled into the Sunset Strip type metal, hair metal. And so to me, I could picture that a little bit later in the early 80s, but still, I mean, they were kind of ahead of their time because that song right there, you could picture being sung by more of a hair metal band.
Yeah, and that's a really good point you bring up. We didn't talk about that earlier. We mentioned that this was kind of taking all the things that had gotten bloated in the 70s with the hard rock bands and mixing it with the punk and kind of creating this blueprint for heavy metal going forward. And it was a direct influence on thrash. Mm-hmm. But it also did influence, I think, the whole Hollywood scene in some ways. And I think that could have been also what kind of killed this scene a little bit. Because the American scene took over so much bigger and broader because of demographics.
Well, and also you can't discount the effect of MTV. And all of a sudden, the visuals became very important, what the band looked like and dressed like and things like that. That maybe these early bands weren't all there as from their looks or something like as superficial as that. And that might have had an impact on some of them.
Right. And these bands they didn't have the proximity to where the biggest companies were, which was in Los Angeles,
LA.
California, or in New York.
Those bands had better teeth being from the West Coast than
probably plastic surgery and whatever else. Yeah, that's a good point, man. All right, so I'm going to play my last pick for the night, and this is another one of Hetfield's Battle Vest bands, one that he really likes, and this is a band that I think had a lot of influence on the thrash scene, although I'm not familiar with any of the thrash bands covering this band, and this is a band called Satan.
Ooh.
It sounds evil, doesn't it?
Wow, they just went right to it.
They just
not going to beat around the bush.
Just went there.
Yeah, going all the way evil.
Satan. This is a band from Newcastle, England, formed in 1979. And again, I think they had a big influence on the thrash scene. One of the things that they did do is they released a couple albums as Satan, and then they changed their name and released a couple of albums.
That was already taken by actual Satan.
Yeah, Lucifer actually filed a cease and desist. From hell. It was a flaming cease and desist. And they changed their name to Blind Fury. So they had a couple in the mid-'80s. They had a couple albums as Blind Fury. And then they changed their name again to Pariah in the late 80s.
That's such an 80s name. I love that.
So I think what they were trying to do is maybe chase some trends. And they changed their name to help chase those trends. But they did end up going back to Satan. They played Wacken Open Air in 2004 and went over really well as a reunited Satan band. And they've actually gotten a deal with Metal Blade. So while a lot of these bands are playing again, not a lot of them are recording again. Satan is one that recently is recording albums again, and they're really good. Like their best material they've ever written is now, even though I love what they did back then. But I'm going to play something from their album called Court in the Act, from 1983. This is Satan with, of course, what else would you name your song if your band was called Satan? Trial by Fire.
Before
I can see why you saved that one for last, because that seems like it was the last stop on the evolution train for Nawabum before thrash metal kicked in. I mean, it's amazing the influences you can hear that a young James Hetfield listening to that said, "Oh yeah, I like that. That's what I want to play."
I can see why Jimmy likes
Or
that one.
said, "Yeah, that's what I want to play."
Yeah, it sounded to me like I could even see Anthrax and Overkill and the New York thrash bands. That had more of a New York thrash band sound to me, but definitely can see how that influenced those groups in the States to start the movement that became thrash, for sure. And that is why I play it last, because I think this was this whole movement saying, here's the torch, take it further.
Next.
And they did. That's our first excavation of the new wave of British heavy metal. I think we'll probably revisit it again at some point.
Please.
Because there are a ton of these bands for such a small island. In the grand scheme of things, they had a ton of bands.
It rained a lot. There was nothing better to do. Play metal inside.
But, and it was such a unique time period, too, because it's really late 70s, early 80s, and then it's kind of over. And the bands that came out of it, if you think of the big bands that survived the movement to this day, as far as being on top of the world, you have Iron Maiden, who continued their path and maybe went a little more epic and really defined what people think of as heavy metal. You have Def Leppard, who they were very young when they started, and they morphed into more of what became hair metal, and they helped define that whole genre of what it was known as pop metal, hair metal, whatever you want to call it. And for me personally, if I think about where I even started with my love of this type of music, of just heavy music, I really went from skateboarding to punk rock to buying Metallica Master of Puppets, which came out in 1986. And everything that's on that album helped kind of define where I went from there with music. And it was all influenced by this. Soon after Master of Puppets, I bought Somewhere in Time and Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. And my mind was blown again. And there you have another new wave of British heavy metal influence. So this really influenced me personally, of just my taste in music. I love where this all came from. There you have it. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much. We will see you next time. Later.
Later.